He was sentenced to the electric chair, but when he spoke his last words, they immediately took him away. The electric chair awaits Michael Stevens, a man condemned for a crime he swears he did not commit. The search for the truth is about to begin. Emily Carter, his determined lawyer, finds clues that could change everything. And a mysterious call reveals dark secrets that could change everything. With time running out, the truth must be revealed. Inconsistencies, conflicting testimonies, and a skeptical detective. The plot thickens. Will Michael be able to prove his innocence before it's too late? Will the truth be revealed in time to save Michael? Find out now. The long walk down death row seemed endless for Michael Stevens. Each step echoed through the narrow passage, reverberating like a gong of condemnation. The walls were cold and damp, impregnated with a metallic, sour smell that seemed to cling to the nostrils of anyone who passed through. He kept his head held high, but his eyes betrayed an abyss of uncertainties and fears. Memories of the events that led him to that moment paraded through his mind like a horror movie, each scene more distressing than the last. Michael Stevens was an ordinary man with an ordinary life until the day everything fell apart. Accused of a heinous crime, the murder of his own wife, he found himself trapped in a web of circumstantial evidence. He always swore his innocence, but justice seemed unwilling to listen. The electric chair awaited, and time was running out. As Michael walked, his lawyer, Emily Carter, was sitting in her office, lost in piles of documents and testimonies. Emily was a determined woman with an unwavering sense of justice. Over the past few months, she had revisited every piece of evidence, every testimony, every detail of the case. Something didn't add up. There were inconsistencies that made her question everything. "It doesn't make sense," Emily muttered as she leafed through the forensic report once more. "The timeline is wrong. If Michael was at work, how could he have committed the crime?" She picked up the phone and dialed the number of David Johnson, the detective who had arrested Michael. David was a man hardened by life and work, naturally skeptical and not prone to changing his mind. However, something in his intuition told him that Emily wouldn't seek him out without a good reason. "What is it, Emily?" David responded, his voice laden with impatience. "David, we need to talk. There's something wrong with the Stevens case. I've found some inconsistencies that can't be ignored." David sighed deeply. "Emily, we've reviewed this case countless times. The evidence is clear." "It's not as clear as you think," Emily insisted. "Can we meet tomorrow? I have something I need to show you." Reluctantly, David agreed. "All right, we'll meet at 10 a.m. in my office." The next day, Emily arrived at David's office with a folder full of documents. She began to expose each of the inconsistencies she had found, from conflicting testimonies to evidence that seemed to have been manipulated. "Look at this," Emily said, pointing to a witness report. "This person claims to have seen Michael near the crime scene at 2 p.m., but he was in a work meeting miles away." David frowned. "That's strange. Why didn't anyone notice this before?" "Because they were all blinded by the circumstantial evidence," Emily replied. "David, we need to reopen this case. Michael might be innocent." Meanwhile, elsewhere in the city, David received a mysterious call. The voice on the other end was low and tense. "Detective Johnson, I have information about the Stevens case. He's not guilty. There's something much bigger behind this." David felt a chill run down his spine. "Who are you? How did you get my number?" "That doesn't matter," said the voice. "If you want the truth, follow the new leads I will send you." The call ended abruptly, leaving David with a mixture of confusion and curiosity. He knew he needed to investigate further. Something inside him told him that Emily was right and that there was much more at stake than they could imagine. Michael Stevens' fate was hanging by a thread, and the search for the truth was just beginning. Emily Carter, determined to prove Michael Stevens' innocence, was in her small office, surrounded by piles of documents and notes. She reviewed every detail of the case, hoping to find a loophole that could save her client. Then, an unexpected discovery emerged: a key witness who had mysteriously disappeared shortly after the crime. The lawyer wasted no time. She picked up her phone and quickly dialed the number of an old acquaintance, a private investigator named Mark. "Mark, I need your help. I have a lead on a witness that could change everything." Can you meet me at the cafe on the corner in an hour? The affirmative response came quickly, and Emily took a deep breath, feeling a spark of hope for the first time in months. Meanwhile, David Johnson, the detective who had originally arrested Michael, was in his office at the police department. He was still disturbed by the mysterious call he had received a few days earlier, suggesting that something deeper and more sinister was at play. With the new clues in hand, he began to follow the leads that led him to discover a web of conspiracies involving influential members of society. David decided to visit an old acquaintance at the Justice Department, someone who might have information about the high circles involved. "John, I need your help. I'm investigating a case that might involve powerful people. Do you know anything about a recent conspiracy?" John looked at him with concern. "David, you're treading on dangerous ground. The people you're trying to bring down won't hesitate to silence you." Meanwhile, on death row, Michael received an anonymous letter. His hands trembled as he opened the envelope, revealing a handwritten message. "There are people fighting for your innocence. Don't lose hope." The letter, though brief, filled Michael with a mix of hope and fear. Who was behind that message? And, more importantly, could it be true that his innocence could be proven? At the cafe, Emily met Mark, who was already sitting in a discreet corner. "Mark, I need you to find this witness. She disappeared shortly after the crime and could be the key to saving Michael." Mark nodded, taking notes. "I'll start the search immediately. But, Emily, you need to be careful. If this witness is really that important, other people might be looking for her too." As Mark began his investigation, Emily returned to her office, where she spent hours revisiting every piece of evidence, trying to piece together the puzzle. The pressure was immense, but she knew she couldn't give up. Michael's life depended on it. David, on the other hand, was becoming more deeply involved in the conspiracy. He discovered that the network of corruption was vast, encompassing everyone from low-level officials to influential members of the elite. He knew he was getting closer to the truth, but also knew he was putting himself in great danger. Back at the prison, Michael tried to hold on to hope. He reread the letter several times, trying to decipher any hidden clues. The wait was agonizing, but the idea that someone was fighting for him gave him the strength to keep going. As night fell, Emily received a call from Mark. "Emily, I found the witness. She's willing to talk, but she's scared. Can we meet her tomorrow morning in a safe place?" Emily felt a weight lift off her shoulders. "Great, Mark. Thank you. We're going to save him." The next morning, Emily and Mark met the witness in a discreet park. The woman, visibly nervous, began to speak. "I saw what happened that night. Michael is not guilty. I saw someone else, a powerful person. I was threatened to keep quiet." Emily took frantic notes, knowing that this information could change everything. With new evidence in hand, Emily contacted David. "David, we need to meet. I have information that will blow this case wide open." They arranged a meeting, knowing this was their best chance to save Michael. The plot was unfolding, and each step brought them closer to the truth. But time was against them, and the conspiracy they faced was much more dangerous than they could have imagined. Emily Carter and David Johnson decided to join forces to investigate a secret club where they believed the conspiracy to incriminate Michael Stevens began. The atmosphere of the club was opulent and clandestine, with men and women dressed in expensive attire, engaged in discreet conversations and suspicious glances. Emily and David, pretending to be a couple looking for fun, infiltrated the place, aware that every move could be watched. "Are you sure this is the place?" David asked, adjusting his bow tie and casting a wary glance around. "Yes, I am. The clues led us here," Emily responded, maintaining her confident tone. "We need to be careful." The duo mingled with the patrons, observing every detail. They noticed a group of men in a reserved room, apparently discussing something serious. Emily recognized one of them as one of the high-ranking members of society she suspected was involved in the conspiracy. "David, over there," she whispered, discreetly indicating the group. "We need to find out what they're discussing." Skillfully, they approached the reserved room. David used his experience as a detective to find a strategic spot where they could hear the conversation without being seen. The men's voices were low but clear enough for Emily and David to understand the gist of the discussion. They were talking about a compromising video that needed to be destroyed to protect their identities. "We can't let this fall into the wrong hands," one of the men said, his voice filled with concern. "If anyone finds out, we're all done for," added another. Emily and David exchanged significant glances. They needed to find that video. With a quick excuse, Emily left to investigate while David continued to monitor the conversation. She discreetly searched the club, looking for any clue that would lead her to the mentioned video. After a few minutes, she found a locked office. Skillfully, she managed to open the door and entered the room. On the desk, a laptop was on. Emily quickly began searching the files, and her heart raced when she found a video titled "Proof." "David, I found it," she whispered into the communicator. "Great job, Emily. Bring it here." Emily copied the video onto a flash drive and left the office unnoticed. She joined David, and they left the club, knowing they had something crucial in their hands. Back at Emily's office, they watched the video. In it, they could clearly see the real murderer committing the crime for which Michael was condemned. The man's face was unmistakable, and Emily felt a wave of relief mixed with urgency. "We have what we need," said David, but he quickly corrected himself, "or at least part of what we need. We need more evidence to validate this." Emily agreed. "This video is a good start, but we need more concrete evidence to ensure Michael is exonerated." As they discussed the next steps, a phone call interrupted them. It was the warden of the prison where Michael was held. The man's voice was grave and urgent. "Attorney Carter, I have disturbing news. Michael Stevens' execution has been moved up. He will be executed in 3 days." Emily felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. "It can't be. We need more time." "There's nothing I can do," the warden responded. "I'm sorry." Hanging up the phone, Emily looked at David, determination blazing in her eyes. "We have to act fast. We can't let Michael be executed for a crime he didn't commit." David nodded, equally determined. "We'll work day and night if we have to. We won't let injustice prevail." With time running out, Emily and David prepared for the final battle, aware that every second was precious. The fight for truth and justice was about to reach its climax, and both were ready to face any obstacle in their path. Emily Carter and David Johnson were acutely aware that time was against them. Michael Stevens' execution had been moved up, and every second counted. Emily felt the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. The pressure was immense, but her determination to prove Michael's innocence kept her firm. In a dark alley, Emily and David met with an anonymous source who promised valuable information. The tension was palpable. The hooded man looked around, making sure he wasn't being followed. "I have something you need," he murmured, handing an envelope to Emily. She opened the envelope with trembling hands, revealing a series of documents linking the real murderer to an influential local politician. Her eyes widened as she read the information. "This is explosive," Emily said, looking at David. "We have to act fast." However, before they could plan their next steps, a car sped by, and shots were fired. They threw themselves to the ground, protecting themselves as best they could. The hooded man was hit and fell, groaning in pain. "Let's get out of here," David shouted, pulling Emily by the arm. "It's a trap." They managed to escape by a hair's breadth, but the threat made it clear they were dealing with dangerous people who would stop at nothing to prevent the truth from coming out. Back at the office, Emily and David analyzed the documents more carefully. The connection between the dead murderer and the local politician was clear, but proving it in court would be a monumental challenge. They needed more evidence. "We need to find more witnesses," David suggested. "Someone who can corroborate this information." Emily agreed, but she knew time was short. They decided to visit an old associate of the politician, a man known for keeping secrets in exchange for money. When they arrived at his residence, they were met with suspicion. "Why should I help you?" the man asked, crossing his arms. "Because an innocent man's life is at stake," Emily replied, trying to appeal to any sense of humanity he might still have. "And because we know you have something to gain by collaborating." The man hesitated, but finally relented. He revealed details of secret meetings and suspicious transactions linking the politician to the real murderer. Emily and David recorded everything, knowing that every word could be crucial. However, when they returned to their car, they found that the tires had been slashed. It was another sign that they were being watched, and that their enemies were always one step ahead. "We need to be more careful," David said, looking around cautiously. "They're hunting us." "But we can't give up," Emily replied firmly. "We're so close." Finally, after exhausting days of investigation, they discovered a vital connection. A substantial payment made by the politician to the murderer shortly before the crime. It was the missing piece of the puzzle. "This is enough for an arrest warrant," Emily said, feeling a wave of relief mixed with anxiety. "But we have to act fast." As they prepared to confront the politician, they received a call from an informant saying the politician was about to flee the country. Adrenaline coursed through their veins as they raced against time to prevent his escape. They arrived at the airport just in time to see the politician being escorted by private security. David, a former cop, used his authority to detain them. "Stop right there. You're surrounded." The politician tried to argue, but Emily presented the evidence. "You're under arrest for conspiracy and murder. Anything you say will be used against you in court." As the politician was taken away, Emily and David felt a wave of relief. They knew the battle was far from over, but they had taken a crucial step in the fight for justice. Now, they needed to ensure he didn't escape the punishment he deserved. Returning to the prison, Emily looked into Michael Stevens' eyes, conveying renewed hope. "It's not over yet, Michael. We're going to get you out of here." Michael, with tears in his eyes, smiled for the first time in a long while. "Thank you, Emily. I believe in you." The fight for the truth was far from over, but with each obstacle overcome, the hope for redemption became more palpable. The house was packed. Emily Carter and David Johnson were ready to expose the corruption involving a powerful local politician. Emily, with her firm stance and determined look, began presenting the evidence, revealing a complex network of corruption that directly implicated the politician. "Your Honor, we have irrefutable evidence that Mr. Bradford was involved in manipulations that led to the wrongful conviction of Michael Stevens," Emily stated as she displayed documents and recordings on the courtroom screen. Bradford, sitting in the front row, maintained a facade of calm, but his eyes betrayed growing tension. The judge, attentive to everything, allowed Emily to continue. She detailed how Bradford used his influence to obstruct the investigation and ensure Michael's conviction to cover up his own crimes. "This is outrageous," Bradford shouted, suddenly standing up. "These accusations are unfounded and slanderous." David, who had remained silent until then, stood up and addressed the judge. "Your Honor, if I may, I have here a testimony from a key witness that proves Bradford's connection to the real murderer." He handed the document to the judge, who examined it thoroughly. The courtroom was absolutely silent, except for the occasional nervous murmurs among the audience. The judge, after reading the document, looked at Bradford with severity. "Mr. Bradford, in light of the evidence presented, this court decides that the charges against you will be formally investigated." The judge's words were met with a mix of relief and tension. Meanwhile, on death row, Michael Stevens was about to face his final moments. The execution chamber was prepared, and the tension was palpable. Michael was sitting in the electric chair, his eyes closed, reflecting on his life and the injustices he had suffered. The chaplain approached and asked if he had any last words. Michael opened his eyes and, with a firm voice, said, "There's something I need to share. All these years, one thing never made sense. On the night of the crime, there was a specific song playing in the background. A song that would only play in one place, Bradford's Secret Club. Those words echoed in the execution chamber and were transmitted to the observation room, where Emily and David watched, desperately hoping for a miracle." Emily's eyes widened as she instantly grasped the importance of what Michael had said. "My God, David, he's right," Emily exclaimed. "How did we not think of this before?" David, equally shocked, rushed to the phone in the observation room and contacted the judge, explaining Michael's new revelation. Immediately, the execution was halted. Guards entered the execution chamber and removed Michael from the electric chair, causing an uproar among those present. The relief was visible on Emily's face, but she knew there was still much work to be done. Michael, still handcuffed, was taken back to his cell, but with a new hope shining in his eyes. Emily and David, now more determined than ever, knew that this clue could be the key to unraveling the entire conspiracy and finally achieving justice. The courthouse was abuzz, with journalists and onlookers trying to capture every detail of the unfolding events. Emily and David prepared to use this new information to put even more pressure on Bradford and expose everyone involved in the plot that nearly led an innocent man to death. They knew they were close to a major breakthrough, and the fight for the truth was far from over. In the gripping plot of Last Minute Redemption, we follow the story of Michael Stevens, a man sentenced to the electric chair for a crime he swears he didn't commit. Alongside him, his dedicated lawyer, Emily Carter, and the skeptical detective, David Johnson, who originally arrested him, embark on a journey to uncover the truth. In an exciting game of survival, overcoming obstacles, and new beginnings, Michael fights for his life and justice, culminating in an unforeseen twist. Emily and David were in the waiting room of the prison, still shaken by the commotion that followed Michael's last words. The phrase he had spoken, seemingly without meaning, echoed in their minds. The clock stopped at 3:15. David frowned, trying to understand the hidden significance of those words. What did he mean by that? David asked, rubbing his forehead in frustration. Emily, more introspective, reflected on every detail of the case. Then, like a bolt of lightning, the epiphany came. The clock, Emily exclaimed, suddenly standing up. Do you remember the video we found? The one that showed the real murderer? David nodded, still confused. In the video, there was a clock on the wall. I think it stopped exactly at 3:15. That means we have proof of when the crime occurred. We need to go back to the secret club immediately and verify this. David and Emily rushed to the car, urgency pulsing through their veins. Arriving at the club, they managed to enter with the help of a warrant that Emily had prepared in advance. They went straight to the room where the video had been recorded. There, on the wall, was the clock, stopped at 3:15, confirming the clue Michael had given. He was right, David exclaimed, almost in disbelief. This clock is the proof we needed to confirm the exact time of the crime. Emily picked up the phone and immediately called the judge responsible for the case, explaining the new discovery. The judge, impressed with the evidence, agreed to convene an urgent hearing to review Michael's case. During the hearing, Emily presented the new video and the clock that had stopped at 3:15. The room was silent as the judge analyzed the evidence. The prosecutor tried to contest, but Emily was prepared. Your Honor, this clock is the key to proving Michael Stevens' innocence. The time indicated here coincides with the moment when the real murderer was caught on video. This shows that Michael could not have been at the crime scene, as accused. The judge looked at the prosecutor and then at David, who confirmed the veracity of the evidence. With a nod, the judge made his decision. In light of the new evidence presented, I declare that Michael Stevens is innocent of the charges and order his immediate release. The room erupted in murmurs and applause. Michael was released, still stunned by the rapid turn of events. As he left the prison, he was met by Emily and David, his saviors. I don't know how to thank you, Michael said, his voice choked with emotion. You saved my life. It was a team effort, Michael, Emily replied, smiling, and the truth always prevails. David, who had initially doubted Michael's innocence, looked at him with renewed respect. Sorry for doubting you, Michael. I hope you can find peace now. Michael nodded, emotional. Thank you, David. And thank you, Emily. You gave me a second chance. Michael Stevens' story became a symbol of justice and redemption. Emily and David, now friends and partners, continued to work together to combat corruption and ensure that other innocent people would not face the same fate that Michael nearly did. Justice had been served, and the truth had finally prevailed.